Thanks for joining me again for another assembly. We're looking at what Christians believe and what the Bible teaches. Now I wonder, have you ever had to be really, really brave? What's the bravest thing you've ever done? It takes hard choices to be brave and do the right thing sometimes, especially when everyone around you is doing the opposite. Do you remember last week in Daniel chapter 2, we saw King Nebuchadnezzar's dream, a dream that showed the future. This time we're going to look at Daniel chapter 3. This is a really exciting story, so get ready. Do you remember Daniel and his 3 friends? In this story, Daniel isn't mentioned, he's hidden. Maybe he was busy elsewhere in the kingdom on important business. His 3 friends, Hananiah, Mishael and Azariah, are the brave men in this story. Do you remember that their names were changed to Babylonian names? They were called Shadrach, Meshach and Abednego. In last week's story, King Nebuchadnezzar saw in his dream a huge statue, and the golden head, do you remember what it represented? It represented him. He was growing in his arrogance and he was becoming very proud and full of his own self-importance. Today's story starts with the powerful King Nebuchadnezzar making a huge statue of gold and again demanding the people to obey him. He was a pretty scary dictator. I think this gold statue dream got a bit to his head. Keep watching this king in the next few stories in the next few weeks, and you'll see the dangers of this kind of thinking. King Nebuchadnezzar made a gold statue, 90 feet tall and 9 feet wide, and he set it up on the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. He then sent messages to all the important people in his empire to come to the dedication of the statue he'd set up. So all those officials came, and they stood before the statue King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Then a herald shouted out in front of them all, "People of all races and nations and languages, listen to the king's command. When you hear the sound of the horn, flute, zither, lyre, harp, pipes and other musical instruments, bow to the ground to worship King Nebuchadnezzar's gold statue. Anyone who refuses to obey will immediately be thrown into the blazing furnace." So, at the sound of the musical instruments, all the people, whatever their race, their nation, their language, bowed to the ground, face down, worshipping the gold statue that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. But some of the astrologers went to the king and informed him on the Jews. They said to King Nebuchadnezzar, "Long live the king. You issued a decree requiring that all people should bow down and worship the golden statue when they hear the sound of the horn, flute, zither, lyre, harp, pipes and other musical instruments. That decree also states that those who refuse to obey must be thrown into the blazing furnace. But there are some Jews, Shadrach, Meshach and Abednego, whom you have put in charge of the province of Babylon. They pay no attention to you, your majesty. They refuse to serve your gods and they do not worship the gold statue that you set up." Then Nebuchadnezzar flew into a rage, and he ordered that Shadrach, Meshach and Abednego be brought before him right away. When they were brought in, Nebuchadnezzar said to them, "Is it true, Shadrach, Meshach and Abednego, that you refuse to serve my gods or to worship the gold statue that I've set up? I will give you one more chance to bow down and worship the statue I've made when you hear the sound of the musical instruments. But if you refuse, you will be thrown immediately into the blazing furnace. Then what God will be able to rescue you from my power?" The 3 men stood before the king. They had a choice to make, to bow down or not. They could obey the king and copy everybody else. That would be easy. It would mean there would be no danger from the king's angry rage. But if they were to bow down, they would be betraying their God, who was the only one that deserved their worship. What do you think they did? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied, "O Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you. If we're thrown into the blazing furnace, the God whom we serve is able to save us. He will rescue us from your power, your majesty. But even if he doesn't, we want to make it clear to you, your majesty, that we will never serve your gods or worship the gold statue that you set up." Nebuchadnezzar was so furious with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego that his face became distorted with rage. He commanded that the furnace prepared would be heated 7 times hotter than hotter can get. Then he ordered some of the strongest men in his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, to tie them up and throw them into the blazing furnace. They tied them up. They tied them tightly. They bound their hands, they bound their bodies, and they threw them into the furnace, fully dressed in their trousers, turbans, robes, and other garments. And because the king in his anger had demanded such a hot fire in the furnace, the flames even killed the soldiers as they threw the 3 men in. So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, securely tied, fell into the roaring flames. But suddenly, Nebuchadnezzar jumped up in amazement. As he watched the fire, he exclaimed to his advisors, "Didn't we tie up 3 men and throw them into the furnace?"
"Yes, your majesty, we certainly did," they replied.
"Look!" Nebuchadnezzar shouted. "I see 4 men, unbound, walking around in the fire unharmed, and the 4th looks like the Son of God." Then Nebuchadnezzar came as close as he could to the door of the flaming furnace, and he shouted, "Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out! Come here!" So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego stepped out of the fire. Then the high officers, officials, governors, and advisors crowded around them, and they saw that the fire had not touched them. Not a hair on their head was singed, and their clothes weren't scorched. Do you know what? They didn't even smell of smoke. Then King Nebuchadnezzar said, "Praise to the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He sent his angel to rescue his servants who trusted in him. They defied the king's command and were willing to die rather than serve or worship any god except their own. There is no other God who can rescue like this." Then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to even higher positions in the province of Babylon. What an amazing story. Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, or Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, were so brave, and God helped them to be brave. Did you notice that they were willing to do the right thing, even if they weren't saved? But the Bible teaches that God is the one who longs to rescue people. In fact, the whole of the Bible is a rescue story. Did you notice who was with them in the fire? He was described as the Son of God. I wonder who that is. It's amazing seeing that throughout the Bible, it all speaks of Jesus. He shows up all over the place. Nebuchadnezzar said, "There is no other one, no other God who can rescue like your God." And it is Jesus who is God's rescuer, the Bible teaches. Jesus promises to rescue and to be with all those who put their trust in him throughout every difficult struggle, every difficult time. Now, it's easy to just follow the crowd when they're doing something wrong. It's much harder to be brave and do the right thing when it means we will be the odd one out. Here's something to think about. How can you be brave this week? And when you're going through a difficult time, who do you ask for help? Don't struggle on your own. Talk it through with someone and allow someone to walk with you through that tough time. Let's have a quiz now and let's see what you can remember. Thanks for joining me today. God bless you, and bye for now.